No.
No, it was during the day.
Oh yeah, it doesn't have to be.
All right.
Hey, it is very warm out.
It's true.
So welcome to Diversity in Games. My name is Alison Carrier, and I'm going to moderate this panel. Previous years that we've had this have been really good, positive conversations about it. So we're going to talk about all the different sorts of things that we want to see represented in games in terms of gender, sexuality, race, ethnicities, etc. And then like how it's also represented in the games industry and what we're trying to do to increase it, because I'm going to assume most people are pro-diversity.
Quick poll.
Yeah, quick poll. So, and of course, like, we all want to see ourselves represented in the media that we love. So, we'll start with introductions. I'll do a few questions, and then we'll open it for Q&A. So there is a microphone there. I'll let you know when it's time so you can go queue up. So you don't have to go stand there right now, because that would suck for like a half hour. I would feel bad. So let's start with Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren Brown. I'm currently a lead environment artist at EA Red Crow in Austin, with these two fine people as well. And previously, I worked at Floyd County Production for almost 5 years on various television series such as Archer, Chosen, Unsupervised, FX's The League, and many other projects in TV. So I actually have a lot of experience in animation, and also now breaking into games as well. It's very exciting.
Hi, I'm David. I work at Harris Studios. We publish a game called Smite. I'm an events and marketing producer, and I love diversity.
Oh, I guess I'm the moderator. Yeah, I'm a UI UX designer. It's Sunday.
It's all right.
I'm a UI UX designer for Electronic Arts Red Crow division, and I've been working in mobile games for about 5 years now. And I've been a gamer all my life. Yep, that's it.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Gonzalez. I'm a game designer for EA Red Crow. I've worked on Madden for a couple of years, and now, and then Simpsons Tapped Out. I'm currently working on an unannounced title. Love diversity.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't say it.
I didn't say it.
I love diversity too.
I better love diversity.
It's in a competition now.
Nick, love it. All right, so I guess we'll start by talking about just some general issues. So what do you think right now is the biggest challenge for getting diverse representation in games? Or is that a hard question?
Diverse representation in actual video games? Or
Yeah, in actual games, not the industry yet.
Okay, gotcha. What to think about it? It's always a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the arguments that you will hear are sort of a little patriarchy encoded, like, well, we didn't want to lose money on that game, so we didn't put a woman in it. Or, well, the animation cost a lot of money. And so, I mean, you can look at a lot of reasons like that. Like, I mean, games are a business. They are made to make money, and there is a heavy notion that if you make games about a non-white male, no one will play them. And obviously that's changing. I think a lot of people are obviously cosplaying games that go against this in the audience right now, which is really great. But I think a business side is probably the biggest obstacle.
Yeah, I think companies are still failing to recognize that there's really a big need and push for the need of like diversity in actual games, and they're still trying to stick to that old way of just, kind of like going the tried and true formula of just like, oh, let's just have a white male protagonist, just like, everybody recognizes this, everybody can relate to him. And it's just like people want somebody to actually like relate to like all kinds of people across, the world. So it's like, they have to start recognizing that there really is a big need for it, because we want to see ourselves in games, because I think being able to see yourself in a game will actually convince, kind of like encourage you to want to, join that industry, because you see yourself represented there. So, I know it's a positive environment to be in, so, yeah.
And it's really easy to make something and model it after yourself, and in a lot of cases, the people people in position of power are all very undiverse. It's the same set of people, and when you have a system of checks and balances and you're trying to make a systemic change, it's hard to when you're trying to go through the gates of white male, white male, white male to approve the whole implementation of characters.
Oh, yes?
Well, I just have one suggestion. I was actually at the diversity in comics panel yesterday over at the American Mart, and they talked about how it's so hard, like, for example, trying to find information, because there were definitely black comic artists. The problem is they did not bother to leave really records behind, and, like, obviously people at these companies felt there was no point in trying to keep records of who these people were. Talk about, in their process of doing research, they couldn't find very much, because it just wasn't the records there, and she would bring that up. Because that kind of reminds me, a while back, you know, I was on a bus in the middle of Taiwan, and they were showing the movie Let's Be Cops. And I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. It's okay as far as movies go, but one of the major plot points in the movie is this black guy who's trying to pretend to be a gangster, while he's actually a game designer. And one of the major plot points is the movie comes out that he's a game designer, but he's trying to pretend to be this muscular, tough guy cop. Because he doesn't want people to know he's a game designer, because he thinks other people will view that as kind of weird and geeky, especially for a black male. So I don't know if there's any truth in that, if it's one of the things people don't kind of want other people to know, or maybe other people view as kind of weird, but maybe there's some truth there, I'm not sure.
Well, I think you're talking about society at large. There's a lot of things that you know, the groups have to deal with, because there is systemic change that needs to happen just from the top level down. But we should probably keep it, I guess, focused on games for now.
Because you could talk about like access to the tech field, especially in impoverished and minority neighborhoods and stuff like that, which again is just like a massive topic.
Oh yeah,
something that we could not solve in 1 hour.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Another problem seems to be a very vocal minority online. Every time you try and introduce a black lead character, a female lead character, a transgender lead character, any of this, you suddenly get all this pushback by, oh, they're trying to force their agenda down our throats, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is they're so vocal that usually somebody in the game's management hierarchy decides, well, okay, maybe we should pull this, even though they are, I would like to think that those people are in the minority.
Yeah, it is definitely easy to see that they are a vocal majority. They definitely scream the loudest. But I think, yeah, I mean, especially being sort of a public-facing person for my company and the community, like, I always expect to go into a Twitch chat and see ranted crap about me after being on stream, or like reading YouTube comments. But the horizon is definitely better than we've seen in the past years. I think too, a lot of it comes down to the idea of projecting yourself onto a character, right? If you play a game and the lead person for me is an Asian person or is an African American person, that projection is really easy for you, right? Like, you can be like, oh, this person is very similar to me, and I can play as this person, and my immersion into their narrative is so much better, right? I think there was a lot of studies recently that white males in particular have less of ability of projection than minorities, because they're probably used to being able to just see themselves in a game, or see themselves in a book, or see themselves in whatever media, and I think that also plays a really big part in it, because they're like, I can't pretend to be a lady, like, I don't understand. So, and I think because, like, if you're a minority, obviously you have grown accustomed to it in playing a game. Like, you can boot up The Witcher and be like, well, I'm not some old white dude, but I guess I could throw some magic spells around for a while and sort of get into this. And I think telling, like, a lot of it is just like explaining that to a person who's in a minority, right? Like, and being like, well, I have to do this every time that I boot up a game, and just because you feel uncomfortable about it doesn't mean that it's not a solid narrative to have.
I think also that in you know, I always have, when I'm reading an article, something in the back of my head, don't read the comments, don't read the
Yep.
comments, don't read the comments. Fuck, I just read the comments.
It's addicting in a way, isn't it?
It's addicting in a way, but I've always found it empowering, and people, it often gets criticized, but whenever a website or a YouTube page turns off their comments, I just seems to be a happier culture there, because it pushes away a lot of the hate talk. And the people who are actually passionate about what the content is being displayed on the internet, they have the means to communicate that to the developers or the marketing team, the community managers. There's other means of communication than the YouTube comments. And it's always interesting to see that when you look at a site that just has open, unmoderated comments, the majority of it is hate, and the actual good critical comments are few and far between.
Yeah.
So sometimes just turning off those voices, just so I don't have to constantly remind myself, don't read the comments, don't read the comments.
Yeah, with any movement for change, there's always going to be a huge pushback anyway, like regardless of like what kind of change it is. So it's like, even though these people are being loud and negative, like the change is still happening. People are still hearing what we actually have to say. And like, you know, it's just like we're creating like all kinds of movements, and you know, obviously there's going to be counter movements too, but that's literally with any kind of like change movement, anything. So it's just like, this is a natural part of it, and I'm glad that, like, you know, even though they're so loud, so negative, and so vocal, and it stresses me out to read all those horrible comments, I know that, you know, there's still something under the lines actually happening that's like, you know, moving towards the positive, because we can only move forward, I think. Like, it's not going backwards because of that vocal minority. So, you know, just like, it's hard to keep that in mind, but sometimes you just have to remember, like, you know, they're not making it go backwards, they're just spewing hate the loudest. That's really it.
So what part of yourself would you like to see represented in a video game, and then is there an example of a video game that is doing it really well right now?
That's a hard question too.
Yeah.
I mean, just seeing me is nice.
Yeah.
Seeing me shown in a video game is really nice. Well, I'm going to be cosplaying later on, by the way. But yeah, like just being able to see a person who, you know, like may not necessarily be like the ideal kind of like, you know, not the most beautiful or not the most, you know, just like idealized like heroine even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just seeing kind of like a normal person doing heroic things is very heartening, especially, you know, a person like from kind of like an underprivileged background or something that's like a world that's working against them. It's really encouraging to, you know, that's the kind of character I want to see more of, because I think that even with more diversity and like represented in games, like we still kind of have an idealized version of that diversity. So to be able to kind of like see a normal person doing amazing things is pretty cool.
For me, I really like seeing things that go against gender binary. We have Krem in Dragon Age Inquisition. I cried many tears meeting him. I think The Sims 4 just released, where they were like, there isn't, like, we aren't going to gender our clothes, and you can wear whatever you want. You can have whatever body shapes you want, which was really cool to see too.
Yeah, we had a really good community actually ask for that, and when we
Yeah,
granted that,
EA.
yeah.
Oh.
I say we EA. And then yeah, it had an overwhelming positive response when it happened. Like that community has always wanted that feature, and they loved it once we were able to kind of provide that to them. You have a game?
You want to answer that?
No, I don't want to answer my own question. I'm moderating.
A game that's a good example?
Oh, do you know of a game maybe that's representing what you kind of want to see more?
Can't be Bioware.
But it's hard.
The whole
Yeah. It's too easy.
It's really hard not to be a Bioware fan.
It's
It
true.
just fits.
Yeah.
No, I don't actually have a good game example. I just like to. I wish there was less typecasting. I mean, it happens in almost any form of media, but most Hispanic characters I see are usually mafia, gangbangers, people on the streets, and I like to see a little bit different. And coming from that background, my family, we're passionate, love each other. Family's a strong unit, and that just doesn't ever seem to come across in the portrayal of the characters in games, but really in all forms of media.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say The Sims 4. I like that they just kind of took that gender out. Anytime that there's a character customization and it allows for gradations of different types of either color or body shape, clothes, that kind of thing, that's what I really appreciate. So I was going to say BioWare, but I'm not going to talk about BioWare.
This is now the BioWare appreciation panel.
So yeah, I guess I would like to see more of that, or at least more. If there's no custom character, then just having characters made that aren't even human anymore, so that we can all try and relate to that character.
Yeah.
Like, or in the Blind Forest, you know, that thing emotionally wrenching in the first 10 minutes, and there's not even any words like really going on except for that over narration, and I basically wanted to start crying. So, well, no, I did cry for days.
Yeah.
I weeped. I weeped. I've never had a game that made me cry like that. Actually, even The Last of Us didn't make me cry that hard. So.
Oh, I'm coming back now. All right. I love Crusader Kings. You know, portraying accurate medieval history is never a good thing when you're looking at diversity. But they just introduced a patch. They introduced a patch that literally has a gameplay option right at the beginning where you can women equality rates. So basically, you can just switch it so that right at the offset in the game, you can have women in positions of power at any point. Shout out to, I think, Total War series where they've done warrior women expansions where they have actual units so you can recruit and train of female warriors. So like in Rome Total War, any of those major battles, there were women who fought and they would actually be portrayed, which was really nice.
Oh, cool. Well, let's talk specifically about the industry a little bit. So what's the climate right now for working in games?
Well, I think it's definitely starting to shift towards more diverse for sure. It still has a long way to go, absolutely. You know, like just even being in the industry myself, just like there's nobody else who's like me there. So I'm just like, you know, there still needs to be a push for more people to get into it. But like you said earlier, it is like a lot of it is a lack of resource. You know, especially for, you know, people of color, Black people, like impoverished people who don't have access to these, you know, these resources that everybody else gets access to. So I think it's like a lot of it has to do with kind of creating a space for those people who want to explore those things without, you know, having to have them go to like a college that's going to put them in debt for the rest of their life, like me. And it's fine. A lot of people can relate. Like,
that's true.
We're all
Student
together.
loans. That's another hour long talk.
Yeah, seriously. Let's not get into that. But just like, you know, like I think that the thought to a lot of people does, like, it just doesn't occur to them that they can even pursue this, that it's even reachable. And I really want to get that message out there that it's possible for anybody to do it. Like, there's resources that, you know, that just people don't know about, people can't, you know, access, or they can't access. But I think the word just needs to get out there, and more, you know, more things need to happen to kind of like reach out to everybody to get in the game industry.
Yeah, and I think, especially at high res, I don't know how much shit I should talk about my own company. But when I started, there was definitely a small culture of sort of calling ourselves out, right? Of being like, this maybe isn't great, we shouldn't be doing this, and a lot of it would sort of get a little bit brushed off by higher up execs. I'm sure this happens in every company. But even over the past year, the amount of seriousness that these claims, like that these statements are taken, has skyrocketed, right? I think there is a better sort of call-out culture, for better or worse, in gaming media, which has helped a lot of sort of higher ups sort of open their eyes to these things, and it allows for more people to be like, no, this is not something that we should be doing, and we should definitely reconsider. And I think that conversation is getting better and better month by month. So.
I'll say that at least in the industry, I'm starting to see lots of little communities pop up for the minorities, like Black Girls Who Code, you know, and the larger companies are starting to support them because we realize that you know, the resources aren't there, and so we're trying to do what we can to start people pretty young so that they do get those opportunities that aren't necessarily always granted to them. And you know, so there's that. There's lots of Girls Who Can Code kind of programs that are coming up too. There's Women in Games International. There's lots of like cool meetups that are happening. It's just so that you can build those relationships within the industry, and then also volunteer your time to the younger generation to make sure that they don't feel like this isn't a place for them.
Coming from an educational perspective, it's nice to see the school that I came from is like my master's program at UCF, Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy. It's a really good game development program, and it's fun to look at the kind of graduating classes and the portraits. And starting with your initial graduating class where it was just all white males to the most recent graduating class of 60 students, like very rich, diverse backgrounds. So it's good to see the education system kind of helping support it, and you kind of help people, because game development is kind of one of the trickiest, weirdest things to get your foot in the door. And, seeing that actually be supported and helps bring people into the industry.
Yeah, so also, apparently there's a microphone passing around. That person has it.
Initiative.
So, like, if you want to ask a question, we're going to just actually kind of just open this into a forum and a conversation. Let's have a discussion back and forth. So, if you want the mic, you can go for it.
Well, this guy's got dibs.
All right.
Deal.
Deal.
I think at the very beginning y'all were talking about the industry. Sorry. I think at the very beginning you were talking about the industry's fear to include minority protagonists, or maybe their discomfort with white male protagonists. Is there any example of maybe a game where they tried to push boundaries and either social media or something about them trying to push the boundaries made the game fail that's scaring the industry? Or like, is there just none that they just don't know what to do?
Like, was there someone who was actually trying to make a good attempt at it and got huge negative criticism for it?
And then changed because of that criticism?
Not that I can think of in recent years. I mean, I think a lot of it too is perception of that game, right? Like, when it happens and the game comes out, a lot of people will be like, oh, this game was a big flop, and then you find out that it actually sold really well. I can't think of one where they've completely revamped an entire game because of internet people.
Well, Ubisoft at least tried to come back from their whole it's harder to animate females.
Yeah. Or the Revolutionary War was a story about men only. Like, girl.
No, I mean that was an instance where like social media was up in arms about that whole quote, and then they came back with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and they're like, look, female playable character, we're sorry.
We tried.
And that game ended up being really well made, especially compared to like Unity. That game was terrible.
No perfect answer, but two crap answers. Nintendo with Legend of Zelda, but the Dynasty Warriors game. They introduced Linkle, a female Link, and that was well received. I mean, the game itself. I love Dynasty Warriors personally, but so any game like that, I'm cool. They had a female Link in a game, and then they released this new open world Legend of Zelda game, and they say they can't do a female character, or they can't do a female Link because they can't make it work with the story or plot, and it's like, no, you just swap it.
It's not that hard.
You literally add 2 letters to the main character's name and you're done.
You made your own lore. You can change it a little bit.
My favorite was like, you change the plot from a guy named Link saves Princess Zelda to a girl named Link saves Princess Zelda. Done.
Or Prince Zelda.
Or Prince Zelda, sure.
I like that.
And the other crap answer was just a case where I like that they stood for it when EA announced that they were supporting all the Pride festivals happening around America. They received a ton of hate, and it helped. It was one of the reasons why they were named worst company in America, I think 2 or 3 years in a dumb internet poll.
The Golden Poo Award.
And at the time, I think Peter Moore was just very vocal about it, and he's like, oh yeah, we're worst company in America, oh no, we're so terrible, we're not changing our stance.
That's right.
EA actually has groups that will march in Pride too, and will work booths and whatnot and stuff, so we're very happy to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Mine's kind of related. First off, to my knowledge, the only time video games have actually changed based off of reaction actually has more to do with violence or depiction of military figures. Every instance that like, just real quick, research was, yeah, that's all. It's mostly military figures. Anyway, related to him, I actually was wondering why there is still a resistance to feature female protagonists. He was asked about has there been a flop, but I can actually give examples of games that have proven to be like pretty successful that have female protagonists. For instance, Samus in Metroid, Tomb Raider, with the exception of the most recent Metroid. But that had other issues.
Yeah, it's not a good game. It's just like, it's okay.
And then, but then like Tomb Raider. So you have these examples of female protagonists that are clear, and like the games are clearly successful. Like they don't, to my knowledge, they don't show any lesser sales than comparable games, and yet there's still a resistance. I wonder if you guys might have a reason for that?
Yeah, that's why I said that the argument that it's bad for business is very patriarchy coded, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of statistics and science will tell you completely otherwise, and you're like, no, that's wrong, dude. And he's like, well, it's just traditionally that way in the game industry. And it's just like, read an article sometime. Like,
so it's mostly a mindset thing, I'll say, especially in your case for the Tomb Raider. Like the lead producer on that, when he was interviewed about Lara Croft, he said, you don't want to be her, you want to protect her. Nice, good reaction. So it's like, it's patriarchy included, right? It's him thinking that he can't see himself as a woman. And so because he's in a position of power, his influence and his mindset will be influencing people on his team, because he's a producer, especially, is the voice of the video game and has to be able to talk about it at length and embody it. And so when he's doing that, then there's going to be more and more people probably above him that share that same sentiment, which is unfortunate. And so like what it comes down to a lot is you have to just start showing them science and data and being like, no. Look at it, make money. Look at it, make money. You like money, right? Money. Yes.
I tried, made this much money.
But like it's an ongoing battle. Like you have to do it all the time in every circumstance. You can't like give up at any point. Like it's exhausting, but it has to happen. And then all the little microaggressions that happen because of the patriarchy. You have those conversations with your coworkers, and you just have to slightly start educating them over, like, what if we had like a female protagonist, or maybe non-gender specific?
or what if we added one female character who doesn't have a belly shirt on?
Maybe we just don't do boob physics? Let's not do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, it's like actual conversations can happen, and it's heartening because I had a conversation with one of my coworkers about like dressing a character, and I was just like, she wouldn't wear that, like she's like she wouldn't be there wearing that dress, like put something else on her. And he was like, oh, like I didn't realize that. Okay, like I'll change her then. And it's just like having those conversations actually does help, even though it doesn't seem like it's on a small level. It's not going to be a grand scale all at once. It has to be like it's an incremental change, but the change is happening, and that's what's encouraging.
All right. Okay. I was going to say, we actually have a coworker who took a women's studies class, and he did it at the behest of his wife. And now every time that he has a conversation with me, he's like, shit, did I just say something that was patriarchy encoded? Am I pig? I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. And I'll just be like, no. He's like, I'm sorry, did I offend you? I'm stupid. I was brought up this way, and I'm trying to, like, he's trying to.
And then you kick him in the shins and you're like, that's right, pig.
Only once.
Felt great.
Afterwards. No, but like I actually think the fact that other people are going to educate themselves on that, like that's starting to happen more and more in the workplace, and that's very encouraging. I think everyone should take a course in women's studies or intersectional feminism. Like, that's the jam. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
And I think too, the game studios that like BioWare that we all know and love, they're huge proponents of just going out and asking people that you're trying to write about, right? Like, I was on a panel last year with Patrick Weeks, who wrote for Creme, and was like, you know, I am not a trans person, so I went out and asked all my trans friends. And sure, it's still not a perfect narrative, but at least there is that effort to bring a genuine narrative to the people you're writing for.
Yeah. Where's the mic at?
Over here.
Oh, hi.
Hello again.
Hi again. I'm curious what you think about, for example, you look at Nintendo, the #1 selling franchise is Mario, the second is Pokemon. And Pokemon in recent years has been very subtle about what they've been doing kind of with race, considering it's from a nation that's like 99% Asian, one race, like 99% of the population, but they've been, being a worldwide company, they're trying to, you know, first of all, they introduced like the color palette in X and Y where you could like have darker skin, and then they're introducing even more, I don't know if this racist says, but they're introducing even darker skin in the next game, Sun and Moon, and just gradually introducing more dark skinned characters. So kind of, do you think that will kind of help things for like Nintendo, or this is kind of a good thing, or this is not enough, or what do you think?
I will tell you right now, when I opened up Pokemon X and Y and saw that I could have dark skin, I lost my complete shit. I was so happy. Like I should have answered that question before in the women panel, because like that was actually the game, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like things really are changing when Nintendo gives me a dark skin option to be like I have a character that looks like me. It was I think it definitely helps, like because you know Pokemon already has a wide audience, Nintendo has a wide audience, but you know when people see themselves in games, it encourages them to want to play more of them. So it's just like I think that is always going to be a positive change, and it's always going to be, you know, a great thing to see, and I was just so happy.
I think it's like when the high percentage chance of the first game a kid plays is a Nintendo game, to see them add that kind of support, it's easier for a kid to feel like they're playing themselves in the game, which is awesome. It's Sunday.
Can I?
Oh, Mike.
So I'm going to start this question kind of focusing, I think, and broadening it up. So in Smite you have 8 pantheons at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. 3 Asian, 3 European, 1 African, 1 American. Problem is, the 1 African pantheon is mostly Mediterranean in culture rather than Sub-Saharan. So there is quite a big fraction of the populace that is not, let's say, geographically represented. However, we have stuff like Idris Elba playing Heimdall in the Thor movies, whereas if you go and check the Scandinavian page in Smite, it's mostly Scandinavian. And then you have the Ice Giants. How to phrase this? How often do you find that people use lore as a cop-out to avoid diversity in their productions?
That is a really good point. And adding more African pantheons is something that we have been talking about a lot, especially because it's like with Egyptian only, it does only cover a very small region of the continent. It is definitely a conversation that comes up a lot with the designers, especially when doing like a Norse pantheon. And yeah, I think it is a defense that they use, but again, like Hi-Rez started with 50 people, it was mostly white dudes, and so there weren't any diverse people in those meetings. And now as time is going on, more and more, Amanda Erickson isn't on this panel, but she is constantly in design meetings now, which is a woman's presence that they've never had before. And the fact that we now have people who can sort of champion these things, I think is really changing our outlook on the sorts of character designs that we're looking at. So,
I think the God of War titles have definitely used lore as a cop-out for why it's they're very whitewashed series, and now that they're entering a new trilogy or a new God of War game, they're going to do Norse mythology, and I'd hope to see that they kind of correct that error, but I don't know, all signs point to no.
Yep.
Here's the next
So as a quintessential white male protagonist myself, I spent quite a lot of time in my life gaming, and I've seen myself, repeatedly, and I'm honestly pretty sick of it. And so I've spent a lot of time, in various games like firework games and things, choosing the options that are not me specifically, choosing the female option, choosing femchef, choosing the Khajiit, choosing dragon, equivalent.
You mean you're not a cat person on the inside?
Because I think it makes the more interesting story and the more interesting game to see things that are inherently not me anymore, because I spend so much time seeing that. And I guess my question to you guys is what can we do as the consumers of games and the ones who want to play the games and see the more interesting things? What can we do to help?
I mean,
yeah, money talks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Money talks, and two, give praise as much as you can, right? Like, tell your friends about it, post on the internet. Devs spend a lot of time on the internet reading about what other people are saying about their games, for better or worse. And so just having that be a really, because it's true, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of MRAs out there who will be like, you put a lady in this game, why are you shoving it down my throat? And so the more that you can sort of reinforce the other side of it, the better the outlook will eventually be. And that's probably my favorite part about games, is that you can make a character who isn't you and sort of try and sympathize or empathize with this character you've chosen to play. Like, I don't go around punching people in the face all the time, but I can play a renegade in Mass Effect and know what that feels like.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We were talking about the vocal minority earlier, and the thing is apathy is actually the enemy. So we need more people speaking out against the people who say, women in games, you're shoving it down my throat. We need to see consumers saying, no, this is what we want, what we want. And because we do read that on the internet, like, the more we get to see that, the more we get to go back to the execs and be like, look, people are actually demanding this, statistically it's making money. Like, here are all the reasons to keep doing this. So that just, besides buying it, also talk about it.
Yeah, I was gonna add that exact same point. I feel like the most encouraging thing for me to see is like obviously the minority is gonna speak out, but when the actual majority is also the ones calling for the push for more diversity in games, that's what actually heartens me, because that's when I know that, like, okay, change is actually happening. And so with your voice, I think it's very powerful, because you can talk to people in your community and tell them, like, hey, I think we should have more of this. And I think they're more likely to listen to you than they are to listen to me, because they're going to say, oh, it's only because you're a black woman that you're telling me this. But if you're saying it, then like, oh, like, you're like me, maybe I should start thinking like this. So I think your voice is very, very powerful in the community, and I'm glad that you think like this, and I hope that there are more people like you.
Cat people forever.
And Khajiits.
It's having that thought-provoking, or starting that thought-provoking conversation. Because think about when you play the game and you made that decision to play somebody that didn't look like who you are. Was that just a skin switch and you played the game the same, or did you actually, in an RPG, did you make different decisions? Did you play the game differently? Did you have a different approach? Did you see something from a different perspective, and then communicate that out to the community online? And devs do read, production, like we're listening, we're looking, and to see that, simulate that kind of conversation would be wonderful.
All right, I know there's the microphone, but this
guy's
one
got
guy has been raising his hand for forever.
Where are you stooping the mic for a second?
I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
No.
Just for a second. Just for a second. No. So,
No,
well,
you're not playing devil's advocate. I'm sorry. Like, the white male is saying I'm going to play devil's advocate.
No. I don't mean it that way. So, and the first comment I was going to say is, yes, I agree. It is difficult as being a white male who has gone to school. It's difficult to, acknowledge different things that are going on. But at the same time, so when I think about playing a video game, or I look at a new title and I look at a trailer, I think about, like, I want to go into that character's world. I want to leave myself. So the whole thing of, creating myself in a video game It's difficult for me because I actually like becoming someone else. I don't want to think about Sean who needs to do his laundry and my room's dirty. I want to think about, okay, I'm in this world as this character. I don't care if it's a woman, I don't care about anything about that. It's just, I saw the trailer for this video game, I saw the review, people say it's good. I want to become this person in this video game. I don't want to be me. So I really don't actually think about race or gender or things like that when I'm playing a video game. I'm thinking about that character that I've become because I've decided to turn my TV on and block the fact that I have to pay bills and do laundry. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
It's.
And I think the nice answer to this is that everyone has a different checklist, right? Like everyone has a different set of what do I need to be immersed into this world. And for you, it's the world has to be really well built. It's more about world building for you. But for a lot of people, it's more about what does the person look like that I have to stare at the back of their head for 800 hours? Or for a lot of people, it's what are the NPCs like? Do I get along with my party? There's a barrel right there. I'm sorry, I always accidentally romance you. Everyone has a different checklist of what do I need to see to convince me to get into this game. And it's great that that it's more about the entire package and the person that you're controlling doesn't necessarily gateway that for you, but for a lot of people it does, and that's just who some people are as people.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is too, like I've been working in business for over 10 years at this point, and you know, talking about like, oh, the high ups and they make these decisions that you have to be a white male in a video game and things like that. Also, it's something to think about is there something that's making them come to these conclusions and come to these decisions? And I agree that there's a lot that us as the customer and the people that are paying money for these video games and the reason why these people have their jobs, I think it's a good thing to think about, you know, what can we do as this culture to be able to go away from that. But the big wigs, I mean, they have a corporate obligation to make as much profit and make as much money for their business. That's what they do. That's what I do for my company. It doesn't matter what I have to do. I'm not saying I'm a corporate slut, but I'm just saying you have to do what it takes to make your company the most money possible. And sadly, and it's terrible, but sadly, that means a white male in a video game. So I think it's a big part of just the people that are paying the money and their customers and the people that are...
Should we step back 2 questions where we explain that statistically this is no longer correct?
Good.
Let's move on to the next question.
Okay. I also can I make a quick logistical announcement? There's a lot of people with comments, and that's awesome. I'm going to try to get to all of you, so when we do the next person, just keep your hand up. I'm going to try and get to all of you, or at least most of you, but I'm on this guy now.
Yeah, we don't have too much time, so try and keep it brief, please, so that we can try and get to everybody.
It's a quick question.
Yep.
As game development becomes more accessible, how do you feel, I don't know if you can ask one. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
How do you feel that indie gaming contributes to having more diversity in games, especially as games are considered now more as an art form and less just as an entertainment source? How do you feel that contributes to diversity when you have people, the people that are making the games have diverse perspectives and are also the decision makers about what games get created?
I think it 100% helps. A lot of things that we run into from big corporate games is that a lot of times we have out-of-country sponsors, and we have to feed a lot of different sort of cultural reference points for how women are treated in different countries and stuff like that. And so when you have an indie game who are sort of more self-sufficient, self-funded, they have a lot more freedom to explore different narratives. Like if you look at things like Gone Home, and games like that where they are sort of a little bit more free to do whatever they want, it's really nice.
Yeah, it's nice to not have any restrictions on, you know, like, and I feel like the voices that make indie games are also kind of like the common voice of like the people who want these games too. And because it doesn't have to go through a big pipeline, because it doesn't have to, you know, like be audited by all these different people, it can be a much more organic and natural kind of thing rather than something that has been, you know, cleansed and washed and then presented to the public. It's something that's very, very kind of raw, and I feel like people resonate better with that. And so I really love the influx of indie games, and like I feel like those are my favorite kinds of games, honestly.
Cool. Next
I
question.
want up here now.
Yep.
Hello. Real quick to his point, when I first started my 1,400 hours in Skyrim, and I was,
there you go.
And I was like, do I want to play a Nord? Do I want to play an Elf? I played a Red Guard first. I actually did choose, and it was immersive. And then later on, I went back and played an Elf, but I actually did want somebody. I wanted it to be me playing. So but when I played Tomb Raider, I played Bill Croft. I just played. I didn't care. And so you play with experience. But my question to the panel, you made the point earlier about resources and education. What should be done on the elementary and secondary levels, like, basically with your experiences, what could have been done differently to inspire young people who maybe know or don't know that they have an interest in computers and coding? From your experience, what would you have liked to be done differently that would have helped you get into the industry? Because once we get more people, diverse people in the industry, that diversity is going to come a little bit better. What needs to change on that educational level before college?
Government funding in elementary schools is a really messed up business, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because if a community is impoverished, they're not going to get funding, and the fact that they don't have funding is the fact that they don't get the technology, they don't get kind of the resources to access. So I feel like it's a very, very difficult, nuanced thing to change, but that needs to change for sure. Like, more resources need to come to communities. More people in the industry who actually have the power to change it, should come down. And I also want to start to contribute to that community and start to educate people for little to no money, so they can actually have those resources without having to pay an arm and a leg just to get to them. But it's a very, very complicated situation. But funding, it definitely needs to change in the elementary and secondary levels.
Yeah, and just more of the developers need to be volunteering as well.
Absolutely.
Like we need
diversity in their voices, and obviously building the different pantheon. Also, the voice of Kratos is a black guy, so there's diversity there.
That's
and they are making the efforts. Also, UGA has a great program for up-and-coming high school students as far as getting into the business. You should check that out if you've got little brothers and sisters. That's what. My question for you guys: you mentioned blogs where we can, as consumers, write in. And not just as trolls, you know what I mean, just posting hate messages, but where can we constructively write in messages of support for games, but also write in that we can actually have an influence for mobile games, because it seems like that's the most, that's the biggest area of opportunity for all of us, and obviously for independent developers and things like that. So what blogs do you guys like, do you read? What game companies are you guys following?
So real quick, there's a writer named Austin Walker, and he just became the chief editor of Vice.com/gaming, which they're going to convert eventually into a full independent .com site. And Austin Walker's really, he's a fantastic journalist who covers a lot of very difficult topics to talk about in the industry. And he's right now taking very open submissions of stories that he wants to put on Vice.com/gaming or whatever that independent site becomes. So if you look that up and you find where you can submit articles to it, I'm sure I'm sure he's hungry for that kind of voice to be heard, and he'll put it on a platform that has a huge audience.
And I was gonna say, if you don't necessarily have time to write full articles or full blogs, even taking to something as easy as Twitter, right? Because so many media sites pick up tweets and publish them alongside their articles to sort of validate, like, look at all of these people saying the same things. So even if you can't write a multi-paragraph thing, a sentence or two is usually pretty easy.
In terms of specifically mobile, I read a lot of journal or articles off of Touch Arcade. So that's a really good resource to give them more of the same for like reviews of mobile games and whatnot, because that's where I go to first.
Yeah, I was also going to say pretty much your point as well. It's like, I feel like, yeah, even if you can't like write full articles or anything, like there's so many channels that you can put your, thoughts out there. And there's ways that you can reach people just through, either Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, anything. Like there's so many channels that you can just voice your opinion out there.
And we have Google alerts on that stuff. So
oh yeah,
yeah, we find it when it gets posted.
Hashtag
Good question. Nice one. Wow. No? Okay, cool. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you guys for a second there. Ooh, really bad, because that was a fantastic question, and mine's a little bit more boring by comparison.
Oh, that's
But,
fine.
I guess, like, I was thinking, because you mentioned Samus, and I started thinking about the fact that her gender, for the majority of the game, isn't really relevant. It isn't known, at least in the first game, till the very end. It made me think about also Shell from Portal, which her gender is also completely, like, irrelevant, and how popular those two games are. And so do you think sort of like the, I guess, visibility of like female characters make it more difficult, less difficult for them to sort of be like popular with, you know, like larger audiences and things like that? So.
This is a pretty broad topic, but I think a lot of times you hear sort of MRAs being like, well, why does it matter she's a woman? This is obviously some sort of agenda when a female character is released. But I think on the flip side, it's like, well, why does it matter that it's a man?
Exactly.
Like, so I think in those games, it definitely did sort of help that it was like, ooh, the surprise reveal, it's actually a lady, was really big for the time. But I think you also sort of run into the problems of like, well, in a lot of single player RPGs, it is really important that it's a woman from the get-go. Or it is really important that it's an African-American person. Or like a lot of, in good character building, those things should really feed into the narrative, and in the times that it is successful, it definitely does.
So mine's less of a question and more just like, there's a game that's been out for a little while now, but it's called Overwatch, and it's I don't really like shooter games, but I play it because there is like I feel like good diversity, and like I love Zarya, who's like womanly and at the same time she's like really badass. And then me and my sister like fangirled so hard when it came out with the new stripper, who's like an older woman. Just amazing.
Yep.
They already had the older guy, and they're like, let's have an older woman in there. I just thought it was a great game because they're trying to like add more diversity and like different body shapes and like different accents, and I'm wondering, like, have you guys heard any good stuff about this? Like game developers are looking at this like, oh, we should start doing this more.
Yeah.
Because it's getting good reviews or something.
Every game developer is looking at Overwatch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Counts on that.
It's great, and it's great that it gives us an easy conversation starter. We'll be like, look at Overwatch, dude. Like, I am not a good shooter player, but I have played countless hours on Zarya just because it's like, hell yeah, I want to be a buff lady. Like, who doesn't?
Fights bears.
I'd also like to give another shout out to another game that I'm actually cosplaying from.
Undertale.
I always thought this game as a game that represents diversity was incredible, especially with how they do the narrative. Like the main character, they never mention their particular gender, how the various character personality types are not necessarily common with what we would define as masculine or feminine. Like how Metaton X is absolutely fabulous and absolutely gorgeous, and it's a male character, while all his family members are representative as they, because they have no, I guess, gender or biological sex. And it's all these little things in the narrative that really speaks to me in terms of diversity, and I wanted to give a shout out to that one.
Hell yeah.
That was actually one of the games that I had in mind when I was talking about the power of indie games communicating different messages. And yeah, I think Undertale does a really good job at, like communicating to all different communities without having to explicitly be, something like, a race or a gender, but it implies it, and I feel like everybody can relate to it because it does that.
I might be wrong about this, but I remember in the early Pokemon games, Professor Oak had the very upfront, are you a boy or are you a girl? And he gave you the two options, and it was text options. And most recent titles, I think they just show you appearance and you choose what
Mhm.
you
Yeah, they do.
Just choose, yeah.
I also like that the language has evolved and they is now a singular pronoun and you don't have to assign a gender to it. I love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Webster's word of the year, some dictionaries word of the year, singular they.
Nice.
Nice.
All right, next one.
So I'm pretty in the middle in social arguments and stuff like that. I can always get both sides. So I love, like I always tell everyone to play the first season of the Telltale's Walking Dead, because even though it was a black character, like that was amazing. But then I have arguments from the other side on like a game like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and because they're two white kids, even though there's no dialogue through the entire game, they're like, I can't play that. And I'm like, but it's a really good story. And then you have games like Overwatch that everyone loves. So I'm like, how close are we to the middle ground where the story of a game is what's important, and then you have the multiplayer games where you can be anything and anyone you want, and everyone can just play whatever they want regardless.
I think again it depends on the genre, right? Like you have single player RPGs that sometimes have character creation, sometimes they don't. I think there is a lot to be said about the fact that the character does drive the narrative a lot, and again, everybody has their own checklist of why will I play this game, right? Like I love the lore and the idea of the Witcher franchise, but I've never played it because I can't put myself in his shoes, and it is distracting when I play it because I'm like, that's not my body type, and I wouldn't move like that. And so I think the answer isn't that every game should have character creation or every game should give me the option. The answer is that there should be a plethora of games that people can choose from, right? Like we aren't saying that, oh, the Witcher franchise is terrible, or oh, Deus Ex is terrible because it doesn't give me the option to play the lady. It's saying that, oh, I don't want to play this game, and I A, shouldn't be penalized for it, and B, there should be other games that I can choose from.
Yeah, like we're just saying white maleness should be de facto. Like that shouldn't just be the go-to because we don't have to think about it, you know? All right, next question. Who has it?
So I'm looking to develop video games for younger students in elementary school, and I was wondering if there's anything you think needs to be kept in mind in terms of diversity when you're developing for younger students or younger audiences like that. If there's anything I should put focus on in terms of how diverse my characters are.
I feel like I'm talking about.
Oh, you're fine.
We love it when you talk.
I think having diversity just as like a default without having to kind of exploit it is probably the best way to go about it, because it makes children readily acceptable to it without having it being a thing. So that's actually my favorite aspect of when games like Portal is like, oh, it just happens to be a woman. Like I like when things happen like that, and I think children are way more accepting of just seeing these characters right off the bat, rather than saying like, oh look, this is a black character, or this is a woman, or this is like an Asian person. Like just having them be there as a default is probably like a really good way to go about it.
Keep it simple, don't overthink it, don't try to force it, don't look at ratios of how many of this or that you have in the game. Put maybe a random generator that spits out whatever race, ethnicity, gender they are, and go with it. It doesn't need to be forced into the narrative or be like, no, hit regenerate because it doesn't work. No, just go random. There's a game called Rust that right now it just locks it attaches your Steam ID to whatever random gender race it picks for you. So
and penis sex.
I was going to add, make sure though that you also include children with disabilities, because we haven't touched on that at all, but that's probably one of the most underrepresented minority group that really needs it. And I know, like, especially with Pokemon Go that came out and all the kids who were using it in hospital for therapy, like, that is a really great tool to teach them that they can participate too, that they can be a part of this community as well.
And not necessarily games related, but a couple examples of sort of kid-coded things that deal with intersectionality and representation.
Steven
Universe.
Universe.
And even using sort of allegory as a way to teach it. If you look at things like Zootopia and you're like, oh, what a cute kids movie about animals. Oh my God, they just talk about intersectionality and racism. So yeah, there are a lot of really good examples out there of like things that are meant for children that speak about really serious things.
All right, it looks like that's the end of our panel. I appreciate all of you for coming out. We had a really good discussion.
Thank you for coming.